everyone, thanks for joining me. I am today going to talk about a magic deck that I have. And it is a modern magic deck, which if you play Magic you'll know is a format, which means a type of way to play, basically. And I might be selling this deck, or I might be selling some of the cards of this deck, because Magic is expensive. And lately I've been mostly playing what they call limited, or a draft specifically. And I've been drafting with some friends, but I don't really play constructed. And none of that's going to make any sense if you don't play Magic, but hopefully it will if you do. So I have this card box, or deck box, and it's an Ultra Pro one, which is kind of the standard. But I put this, I guess, decal on it, which I like. I like lemons. So I have this here, and I'm gonna try to quietly open it up. And kind of a nice sound there. And inside I have this deck. So I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna go through this deck with you. This deck is what is known as 8-rack, which is a type of deck. It's a archetype, I guess, and it's not that great. And you'll notice, looking through this deck, that it's definitely a budget deck. I kind of copied it online with some changes, I think, but it is definitely, there's no Liliana the Veil in here or anything, but there are some good cards, actually. So 8-rack is kind of a fun deck. It's all black. I like playing single colors, especially black and blue and white. Also, that makes it cheaper because you don't have to buy expensive lands. But this deck it's a little bit of control and sort of a bit of combo as well. But it's interesting because it's all about making your opponent discard cards, and then synergies with that. So it's a very annoying deck, and it's known as one of the most annoying decks to play against. Although everyone I've played against has been pretty nice about it. But again, I haven't played with it too much, so I might want to just get rid of it. But I wanted to sort of put it in a video first. So I'm going to start going through these cards. The first card I have here is Inquisition of Kozilek. And this is a really good card. This is a really good card to start out the game with. Because it only costs 1 black mana. It's a sorcery. And it reads, target player reveals his or her hand. You choose a non-land card with converted mana cost 3 or less. That player discards that card. So this is what we call targeted discard, which means you can just take the best card out of your opponent's hand. And it might seem like their best card might be more than 3 converted mana cost. But really, in Magic, in modern Magic, most cards are under that. So, especially in the early game, of course. So it can be really useful. It's almost like a time walk, which is an extra turn spell. Because you can take whatever, if you go first, you can take what they were going to play. Or a useful creature or anything like that. So I really like this card. I really like this art much, and then it got reprinted, which means it was cheaper too, which was a lot of fun for me. I don't buy too many expensive cards. There's a few in this deck, but not anything extreme. No Tarmogoyfs or anything like that. It's kind of a gruesome art, but I think it's kind of fun. The next card I have here is Surgical Extraction, which, talking about art, that's probably one of my favorite arts in the deck. And Surgical Extraction costs 1 black Phyrexian mana, which means you can pay 1 black mana, or you can pay 2 life. And since this is an instant, you could do that at any time, or almost any time. And it reads, choose target card in a graveyard other than a basic land card. Search its owner's graveyard, hand, and library for any number of cards with the same name and exile them. Then you shuffle. So, this card is really good if your opponent is running a deck based around 1 card or a couple cards that need to be out, because you take that card out of the game completely. So this card is a little bit, sometimes it really does nothing though if your opponent just has like a lot of good cards in their deck or a lot of ways to win. But I like it. Once I tried to make a deck, like just trying out online, I had to make a deck that was all about this. There's a lot of other cards that have the same effect, but it didn't really work. But I like the idea. Very much a control deck. Oh, a weird control deck though. The next card I have is Swamp. There's a lot of swamps in this deck, of course. It's a black deck, and the black land is the swamp. And this is a very old swamp. I really like old cards for the most part. I have a commander deck, an EDH deck, which is based around Rain Academy Chancellor, who is an old card, and not a very good card actually, but a fun card. So this is an old card, because you can tell it's old because, for a lot of reasons, this is really old. It has a white border, which I find useful sometimes if your lands are white borders, because then you can quickly tell what's a land and what's not. But I think the white border is a little bit cheesy. But I like here, it says, tap, add black to your mana pool, which is not something you see on lands nowadays. And it doesn't even have the tap symbol. It has the old tap symbol with the T in it. So I think all my swamps in this deck are this. This is my favorite swamp art, I think. It's so classic. It's by Dan Frazier. So I think all the swamps are matching in this deck. The next card is a little bit of a wild card, but it is Smallpox. Smallpox is a very, very destructive card, and it's pretty cheap, only 2 black mana. But you don't see it that much because it's 2 black mana, so you kind of need to be playing mono black, as they say. But it says, each player loses 1 life, discards a card, sacrifices a creature, and sacrifices a land. So that's a lot of stuff to do. And it affects everybody, which usually just means you and your opponent. But we built this deck around to make it more useful for us. Like, we don't have creatures in this deck, and discarding doesn't mean that much to us, and we don't need that many lands. So this card's really good for us. And the 1 life isn't really anything. So I like this card a lot. I've seen some decks kind of based solely around it, which is fun too. Which, if I had, more time and money to play Modern, I might try out. Although, I was to play any modern deck, it would be control. It would be white-blue control. That's usually when I play when drafting. I know you're not supposed to. I know you're supposed to look at the cards you get and pick what's good for that, but I usually end up playing blue anyways. Blue and black are my favorite colors in this game. The next card we have is Shrieking Affliction. And this card is, it's not called Rack, but it's what they call a Rack effect. You'll see the card called the Rack later, and this is basically the same thing. And there's 4 racks and 4 Shrieking Afflictions. So they call it 8 rack, which I guess is a pun on 8-track, like 8-track recording. But, I don't know. Magic decks have a lot of funny names. There's a lot of names named after breakfast cereals, which I think is great, like Oops All Spells. A clever deck as well. So, 8 rack. And it says, at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, if that player has 1 or fewer cards, so 1 or 0, they lose 3 life. So, if you pulled this card in a draft or something, it probably wouldn't be that good. But when your entire deck is based around getting them to discard cards, it's so good. You'll see the rack later, which is a similar effect. Then I have another one. Oh, the rack is just here. That's nice. This is another white bordered card. There's actually a black bordered version of this with much better art. Yet the art on the rack is kind of terrible. I think that's a character from the old sets. The doll. Oh, is it Stuffy Doll? It might be the Stuffy Doll. Who is this sort of a character? But I hate this art. And there's a better art, but the card was a lot more expensive. Because it was a lot rarer, because everyone wanted that. And not this weird doll being ripped apart. But this is a white border card too. So, but I want to have this card out, so it's useful to note that I have this in my hand quickly. But the rack says, if opponent has fewer than 3 cards in hand during his or her upkeep, the rack does 1 damage to each card fewer than 3. So that's worded kind of weirdly, and you end up having to do a lot of math, especially if you have like 3 of them out, which is your goal. But you have to do some math and read the card carefully to determine how much life they're taking. But it ends up being a lot, usually. And it's really useful because when you're out of cards, you're just drawing your top decking kind of blindly. And you don't even want to play the good card you drew, because then you'll take more damage, or you'll continue taking more damage from the rack and Shrieking Affliction. So next I have just a couple more swamps. And then I have Dismember. Dismember is a removal spell. And it says it's an instant, and it costs 3, but 2 of those are Phyrexian mana, so oftentimes you see people paying life, like the Surgical Extraction. And it says target creature, it's an instant. Target creature gets -5/-5 until end of turn. So that's going to kill basically everything. Or if it's going to kill one thing, but it's definitely going to kill it unless it's huge. I think this card and a few other cards like it, which you'll see later in the deck, removal spells, some of them have been replaced by a card called Fatal Push, which came out in Amonkhet, I want to say. And I actually have some Fatal Pushes because I drafted Amonkhet, I'm pretty sure. So I should just replace those, but I haven't yet. But I like this one. It's pretty good, but I think there's some better ones like Fatal Push. And we have another small box. Oh, and this card's probably one of the best in the deck, or one of my favorites at least. And it's Raven's Crime. Raven's Crime just says target player discards a card, so they get to pick. So the they're just going to discard their worst card. Like if they have too many lands, they'll discard a land. So it's a lot worse than Thoughtseize, which you'll see later, and Inquisition. But the really good thing about it is it has an ability called Retrace. It says you may play this card from your graveyard by discarding a land card, in addition to paying the other costs. So once this is in your graveyard, all swamps, or all lands, but mostly swamps, you can just discard that card, pay 1, which is not that hard to do, and your opponent discards another card. So that's a really good way to keep your opponent off cards. So I like this card a lot. Now we have another swamp, which could be a discard spell if you have Raven's Crime out. Oh, and then we have Thoughtseize. This is one of the reasons I want to sell this deck, because Thoughtseizes are pretty expensive. And Thoughtseize, it's cost 1 and it's black. 1 black. Like Inquisition. But instead of a 3 or less, you can take any non-land card, but then you lose 2 life. Which really isn't that bad. Especially because there's some decks where you're gonna have a fetch land and grab a shock land and play this on turn 1, and that's losing 5 life for nothing, or for some things, but this deck is all black, so you'll just play a swamp and play this, and you'll be fine. I like playing just one color. Although my favorite color combination is what they call Esper, which is black and white and blue. I think there's a lot of fun things in that. Although I also like Grixis, which is red and blue and black. My friends all got the new commander decks, the wizards and the vampires and the cats and the dragons, and I am playing wizards, which are Grixis, and that deck is a lot of fun. So we have another swamp. Oh, and this card's really good. A lot of these cards are good. Wrench Mind. This costs 2 black, so again, you kind of only see this card in all black decks. And you kind of only see this card in 8-rack decks, because it's not that good otherwise. But it makes someone discard 2 cards, or they discard an artifact. So it's actually really bad if they have an artifact in hand, but it's devastating if they only have the non-artifacts. That art is kind of gross, though. I don't like that. I like art. Oh, here's a surgical extraction. Good example. I like art that's kind of, still kind of sci-fi fantasy, but kind of clean looking. I don't know. Although I love weird looking cards. If you know the card of Stasis, that's my favorite art. I have that in a commander deck, and the effect is fine. It's kind of annoying, but I love that art. And then I like kind of that clean style of like Twilight Shepherd. I think that's that angel. There's that angel called Twilight Shepherd or Twilight something. That's really nice looking. We have another Raven's Crime. This deck is mostly 4-ofs, meaning you have a playset of different cards and not 1-ofs. So I think we've probably seen most of the cards in this deck. I have a foil. I have a foil card here. You can't really see that, but here's one we haven't seen. This is a Victim of Night, and this is probably definitely one that should be replaced by Fatal Push. This one costs black, and it's an instant, and it's destroy target creature, except for vampires, werewolves, and zombies, which I think is a real flavor win, because it's a very evil card, and evil won't kill evil, I guess. So it's not going to kill vampires creatures of the night, I guess. So then we have other. Oh, I have slightly different versions of the rack, I guess. I'm basically just going until I get to the sideboard because that has some new cards in it. Sideboards are fun because they're cards you can switch out in between games and really change your deck. I also have a Bajuka Bog. I think I only have one of this. And it's like a normal swamp, except it enters tapped, which is kind of a lot worse. But when it enters, you exile all the cards in a player's graveyard. So that's really useful if you're playing against Dredge or Storm, I guess. Or there's a lot of decks that rely on graveyards, which can be really annoying against 8-rack because you're discarding cards and they want them discarded anyways. Or they don't care they're discarded. These are all cards we've seen. Surgical Extraction, Victim of Night, and Swamps. Oh, also, there's one more card, which I think I have 2 of right now, and that is Ghost Quarter. Also, I love the Ghost Quarter art. There's a few arts, but this is my favorite one. And Ghost Quarter is a colorless land, and it taps for colorless mana, so it can tap the turn it comes into play, unlike Bajuka Bog, but it doesn't tap for black, and that's actually kind of a problem, because most cards in this deck tap for and like need black mana, and oftentimes they need like 2 black mana, like Wrench Mind. So I can consider taking this out, but it does have a useful ability. You can sacrifice it. You can tap it and sacrifice it just to destroy a land, and then that player gets a basic land. So if you have a special land like a Tron land or a Shock land or any other special land, you can sack this and they have to sack that, and they'll get a mountain or whatever they want that they have in their deck. But it's worse. It's obviously a lot worse than what they wanted. So that's the main deck. Basically, you Thoughtseize turn 1, Wrench Mind turn 2, try to get down some racks, and then kill anything they put down. I haven't done too well with it, but I haven't played that much with it either. There's not too many opportunities to play Modern where I am. But I am going to talk about the sideboard a little bit, which I think is fun. The first card I have in my sideboard is Languish. And Languish costs 4, including 2 black. And it says all creatures gain -4/-4. So, that's really good. It's actually, if I had my choice, I would put Damnation in this deck. But that's kind of a pricey card. So this is a replacement, and it's almost always just as good. Not all the time, but most of the time. So this is good for token decks and I guess like White Weenie, and whenever they have a lot of stuff on the board. Because we're not going to have a lot of stuff on the board. Except I should note, actually, I have a lot of creatures in my sideboard. Because sometimes sideboards are just adding a couple cards, and sometimes they really transform the deck. And actually, I'll show you the cards in a second, but it's kind of a joke that it goes from 8-rack to 8-rat, because there's 8 rats in the sideboard. And the creatures are all rats, which is kind of a coincidence, actually. I don't really have rat synergy. If I had some Mutavaults or something, that would be good. Or I do have rat synergy, but I don't have that much. Actually, I'll show you that card. It's Pack Rat. And I say it doesn't have rat synergy because oftentimes you only have one of these on the board. Or you play one of them on the board, but its ability makes another token of itself, which can create more tokens itself. So it's a really good card. It's really annoying. But that's the only rat synergy I have. And so there's tricks where you can make other creatures into rats, and this gets really big. But so it gains power and toughness equals the number of rats you control, and you can discard a card and pay some mana and make a token of it. So you have 1, 1, 1, and then you have 2, 2 2s, and 3, 3 3s. So it gets really, really dangerous. Actually, I had a game once. I was playing in an event, and I mulliganed. I'm pretty sure I mulliganed to 4. So I only had 4 cards, and my opponent had 7. And I had a pack rat, and I had 3 swamps, and I won. I just started playing pack rats and more pack rats and more pack rats, and I think I lost the round, or like lost the whole game, but I won that match. I'm mixing up those terms, but anyways. So I have 4 of those. I actually really like rats in real life. I think they're really cute. I have 1 more rat, or I have 4 more rats, but they're all the same. And that is, what is this called? Nezumi Short Fang. So, this card isn't really that good, but you'd think it would work really well. Maybe it's good in some circumstances. It hasn't really worked for me, but I think it's funny. It has an ability. So, for a 1 and a black, tap, target player discards a card. So that's, of course, very useful with my deck. And if they have no cards in hand, you turn around. This is a Kamigawa card. It was an old set where there's the cards that flipped around, and it didn't really catch on. But this says, at the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player loses 1 life for each card fewer than 3 in his or her hand. So it's like the rack, or kind of like the rack. So I would like this to work, but it hasn't really. So I have a few of those. I have another small box. And I have a funeral charm, which is pretty good in some circumstances because it's instant speed discard. And it has a couple other effects on it too. Like instead of instant speed discard, you can make a creature gain +2 +2 -1. So basically that means it can kill a small creature. That's what it's normally used for. Or a creature gains Swamp Walk until end of turn, which I've never ever used. It might be okay if you had a big pack rat, but not really. And the last card in my deck, my sideboard, is Hunted Horror. Because this is in my sideboard because there's a card called Leyline of Sanctity, which gives you hexproof. And that is very bad for 8-rack because there's a lot of targeting players. And Hunted Horror is a very weird card. It says it's cost 2, but it's a 7/7 with trample. But when it enters the battlefield, put 2 3/3 green centaur creatures with protection from black into play under target opponent's control. And what I've heard is that if you have Leyline of Sanctity out, you can't be targeted, so you don't get those, which I think is really clever. Those rules are kind of changing sometimes, so maybe that doesn't work anymore. But so there's a lot of creatures that can come in because your opponent sees you have no creatures, takes out all their removal, and then you put in all your creatures, and then they're all safe, or relatively safe. But anyways, that's my 8-rack deck. I might want to go over some other Magic decks sometime. I don't play Magic too much, but I watch it sometimes, or I draft. So, that's it. I hope everyone watching has a good night, and I will talk to you soon.